What is up, guys? I do hope you're well. Today we have a story from r/NoSleep from the user PoloniumPoisoning. I will just say PoloniumPoisoning has opened up their own subreddit, so please feel free to get involved. The links are in the description below. The drug experiment. My name is Maya Smith, and I've been through a lot in my life, but still, I was horrified beyond words when I became aware of the events. Well, let's start from the beginning. My father-in-law, Dr. Melvin Shanton, killed himself a few years ago, before I even met my husband David. In the occasion of his suicide, Melvin left a letter to David's older brother Saul, detailing the unethical experiments he was involved in. Becoming aware of these events was incredibly hard on my husband. It was like his dad was a whole other person, someone he didn't know. So David decided to go for his father's stuff, and well, I think he was better off not knowing. The following is Dr. Shanton's personal diary about the events. January 3rd, 1990. I'm utterly destroyed as a father and as a human being. Dinah and I put so much effort into Jesus. Her mother chose the name. Our firstborn should have been a strong Christian name. Why not Christian though? I started this little diary to ramble. Where did we fail? Our son started using drugs. It's not simply the eventual beer, or even the eventual joint. Most younglings nowadays seem to try at 16. If he drinks alcohol, he drinks until he gets completely wasted and can't get up for days. He nearly overdosed on heroin more than once. He'd been losing his friends and failed school. I don't know why. He had a pretty privileged life. I was only 20 and still working on my college degree when he was born. Poor Dinah was only 18. Still, her parents took good care of our son while we studied. I graduated with honours in sociology, while Dinah became a biochemistry scientist. She's my pride and joy, and the smartest person I know. I'm thankful that we had support from her family, so that early motherhood wouldn't stop her from being successful. Jesus had a happy, carefree, upper middle class childhood. His grandparents raised Dinah pretty well, with the perfect balance between strictness and kindness, and did the same to him. During the weekends, Dinah and I spent a lot of time with Jesus, and he was a loving boy, both to us and to the grandparents. Dinah's mother, Therese, was austere but caring, and the family had very few disagreements. But now here we are, on Dinah's lab, in our home basement, and she's trying to stop our son from entering an alcoholic coma. We agreed not to take him to hospital, because Teresa would know what he's been up to, and she would be worried sick. January 5th, 1990. I talked to Dinah about a little idea I had. Being a biochemistry scientist, she knows better than anyone that rehabilitation works for a very specific profile of users, and our son does not fit it. Teresa's health had been suffering ever since her husband passed, so we don't want to worry her with such a difficult situation. The way he's doing, our son will soon be lost. We both have scientific, curious minds. What if we put him under surveillance, give him a controlled amount of drugs, so he can satisfy his needs and we can study him? I called it the drug experiment. I want to know how the human body and mind responds to it. Dinah agreed. January 20th, 1990. We've been keeping Jesus sedated the last few days. His body truly needs to recover. How Dinah put it, reset. We will be giving him a much smaller amount of drugs, a safe amount. He needs to go clean for a while, so everything from before can be out of his system. My heart breaks from using my own son as a research subject. This would never be my plan if he hadn't fallen out so fast. I tell myself that Jesus would go into self-destruct if we let him be, so I wanted at least to be there for him and observe him. As a sociologist, it's my duty to consider we might be monsters. I don't think we are. Still, I'm very conflicted. February 4th, 1990. Yesterday was Jesus' 17th birthday. He's so ridiculously young to be consumed by drugs. My son is a smart boy. He took after his mother regarding handsomeness, had piano lessons as a kid by his own request, and was good in sports. He had everything. He was everything. I built a place for him in the basement while he was knocked out, tried to make it nice. It's a room pretty much identical to the one he had upstairs, but I made one of the walls with bulletproof glass. There's a camera facing it from the outside to record him while we're not there. Today, we performed a few blood tests, and we'll be moving our boy to his new place tomorrow. February 18th, 1990. Son, I want you to understand why you're here, she said. We both waited for him to wake up in his new condition. I'm an addict, he stated emotionlessly. We just want you to be safe, Dinah replied, in a professional but warm tone. "Here, we can take care of you. We can provide you with what you want, but knowing where you are. We're tired of finding you passed out in the street, son. You could have been raped, tortured, killed. You were helpless and looked like a hobo." "It's fair, I suppose," he muttered. His home was pretty nice, with books, magazines, HQs, and even a brand new video game. I thought it was everything a teenage boy could ask for. We couldn't see the bathroom, and we shouldn't, to give him at least a little privacy, but I installed 2 discreet microphones. If we heard something unusual, we could go check up on him. It's been 2 weeks, he still hasn't spoken another word to us. June 7th, 1990. It's been a while, but nothing unusual is happening to Jesus. He ended up talking again, and it seems like he enjoys the stuff we gave him. I built a system to get him food every day without entering the room. He always loved my cooking. Each day, we give him different drugs, in safe amounts. It's no problem for Dinah to get synthetic stuff, and a friend of mine even got me a dealer for marijuana. I told him I had a cousin that suffered from terrible migraines, and THC was the only thing that could make him better. So far, so good. He looks happier while under the effect of the substances, and he doesn't seem miserable when it goes away. Dinah has been happier too. Seeing him wasting away during the last few months, and not knowing where he was, or whether he was going back home, it was slowly killing her. She was getting depressed and couldn't see a future ahead for our family. Now, we talked and decided to adopt a kid in the near future. She wanted a kid that's a little more grown up. She's not old at all, but it would be hard to keep up with a baby or toddler, then work, then take care of Jesus. "We won't fail twice," she squeezed my arm. I believed her. June 29th, 1990. Jesus has been a very docile boy, just like he was before these nightmarish months of uncontrolled addiction. We talked a lot, and he apologised for making us worry. I listed all his qualities and asked why he would throw it all away. "That's the thing, Dad. I'm never the best. I'm good, but I'm unremarkably." "So you wanted to be famous?" "Not so much famous as important," he replied. "I look okay, but I'm not the best looking. I play piano okay, but I'm not the best musician. Same thing with grades, sports, girls, friendships. I'm always someone's friend, never someone's closest friend." "You're still too young to let those things define you. You had time to find something you could excel at, son." He rolled his eyes. "I don't want to have time. This happened all my life, Dad. It was a lot, and I would only be frustrated waiting to find something I'm good at. What if it never happens? What if I knew that it won't?" "You don't know that, Jesus." "Oh, I do. I've seen it." August 5th, 1990. We've been interviewing a 9-year-old boy. His name is Saul. Dinah fell in love with him immediately, and I really liked him too. The kid is tough but kind, and has been through a lot. His mother died from leukemia, and he had no one else in the world, so the orphanage took him in. Due to Teresa's influence, Dinah really likes biblical names. She thinks it's meant to be. Saul, the first king, we won't let him know that there was one before him. We don't know if we're getting yet, Dinah. I'm all in, but maybe the boy rejects us. She smiled mischievously, showing her twin dimples. How I love this woman. "Oh, I know we will." September 17th, 1990. Our adopted son Saul came home, and Dinah is pregnant. My life would be perfect, but Jesus had his first abstinence crisis. I'll write about this later. I can't deal with it right now. September 23rd, 1990. Okay, so let me explain what happened. First, the good parts, then the bad. Dinah found out she was pregnant a little before saying that she knew Saul would become our son. That's why she was all mysterious and intuitive. We weren't thinking of having another biological son, but now it's going to happen. We couldn't be more excited. Saul is pretty happy to become a big brother too. He used to have a little brother, but unfortunately died of meningitis as a toddler. Our adopted son is adapting pretty well to the house, and is aware that the basement is off limits because Mum works there. He's a very good kid. Now, the ugly part. Jesus was having lunch when suddenly he had the urge to hurt himself. So he took the knife and made a cut under his eye, vertically across his face. He then proceeded to scream and knock his head against a bulletproof glass wall. Luckily, I am working from home that day, so I could rush downstairs and stop him. We physically fought, and God, my boy was so strong. He punched me on my face 3 times and accused me of stealing away his life. "I'm just trying to save it, son, I swear. You're keeping me prisoner in my own house." "You're not a prisoner, Jesus." So, you're saying I'm free to leave? As I sobbed, I injected the emergency sedative into his arm, all purple from the heroin, and put my son to sleep. I then tended to his wounds and took away all objects that could hurt him, including the razor he used to shave off his adolescent beard weekly. The boy's beard is still full of gaps, and he is steadily consuming 7 kinds of drugs, 1 per day, every day, with his parents' endorsement. September 28th, 1990. We'll have to give him higher doses. That's everything Dinah said when I told her about Jesus' breakdown. No tears, no trembling voice, nothing. It was the scientist speaking. Aren't you, worried about our son? Melvin, I don't want it to sound worse than it is, but I'm protecting myself from the pain. I grieved when we found him in the back alley dumpster. I grieved when he went missing for 2 days. I grieved when we put him here. She sighed. Now we're just going to give him a sobrevida. We're prolonging his life through the point where it pretty much ended. So you're saying you have no son? I'm saying it like he's in a coma, and I have no hope of him waking. I'll still do my best to make him as comfortable as it can get, but I won't let myself suffer. I knew this woman my whole life, and I didn't expect her to be this strong, cold even. I don't know if I like it or not. October 13th, 1990. What happens to the human mind when you constantly feed it an amount of drugs that's statistically safe? At first, it's a high, the fun, the reason people use drugs for. Then the mind seems to collapse, but it doesn't break, it multiplies. Every shattered piece becomes a whole universe. After his first breakdown, Jesus developed 3 other personalities. One of them simply stayed inside his closet all day. The second was very pleasant to talk to, way more than my boy in his normal state, but the third knew things that it shouldn't. It still hurts, doesn't it? He stared at me with unfamiliar eyes. You still blame yourself for Amelia. Who's Amelia? Dinah asked. Tell her, Dad. Tell Mother who is Amelia Hayes. Or if you'd rather, I will. Tears streamed down my eyes immediately. I was doing my very best to forget. It was so stupid. I did my best to tell Dinah. Before her, I had a girlfriend. It was more like a special friend. It was a silly relationship. Childish even. We would kiss eventually and never had sex, but did everything together. It was 1969. Almost Christmas. We were 16. We both loved watching movies. We went to the local drive-in to actually enjoy them. We watched Hello Dolly by Gene Kelly 3 nights in a row. Amelia was fascinated by it. We had a ridiculous fight in the car about what was his best movie. I really enjoyed Dolly, but my favourite was still Singing in the Rain. It escalated so fast. Amelia got upset by my opinion and how I stood by it. I know she was wrong, but she was just a young girl. It was like announcing Christmas had been cancelled that year. I should have simply agreed with her to end the pointless discussion, but I didn't. Amelia left the car running. It was late in the night. I didn't look for her. She knew our town like the back of her hand. But after that, she only came back in a body bag 2 months later, and she had suffered. Everyone said it was not my fault. Amelia was a sweet girl, but everyone was used to her sudden tantrums. If it was nowadays, she would probably be medicated for bipolar disorder. Her mother said I couldn't possibly know that this would end up so tragically. I never told this story to anyone after I left college. It's the ultimate taboo to my family. They would never tell it to my son. But there he was, knowing it, making me remember it. Guess Dad thinks I'm weak-willed because he had such a strong mind. No toxic substance at all in it, Jesus said mockingly. November 19, 1990. Things are pure hell. Dinah is terribly moody. I've been having awful nightmares about Amelia's mangled body, and Jesus' third-person personalities keeps revealing things that he couldn't possibly know. You never met one of your grandfathers, right, Dad? But your nana didn't tell you that he had to escape to Peru after killing a man in a bar fight. You had a miscarriage when I was 4. You didn't tell Dad because you didn't want to have more kids, and you know he did. You know that weirdly positioned garden in the neighbour's backyard? There's actually someone buried there. We gave the police an anonymous tip, and oh God, my son was right. They found old human remains, older than my son for sure. November 28th, 1990. Dinah said we have to study his brain. Maybe there's a clue to why he knows these things he shouldn't. Years ago, she had a hypothesis that some memories are passed through DNA, but with no real evidence to support it, she had to give up this research. I know this is important to her career, but I fear for my son's safety. I fear my beloved wife will treat him like a mere lab guinea pig. I don't think right now is a good moment to deal with something so important, and I told her that. Promise me I can do it after the baby is born, Melvin. I don't know if I can promise you that, my love. She closed our bedroom door and yelled through it. You were the one who suggested studying him. I won't stand by taking notes forever like a stupid sociologist. December 10th, 1990. When were you planning to tell me you'll have a new kid? Jesus had his arms crossed, inquisitively. Dinah is a petite woman, so her 4-month pregnancy isn't showing yet. Besides, she doesn't get sick often, so Jesus never saw it. The two of us were alone in the basement. As the pregnancy progressed, she went downstairs less and less. We already told you about Saul, son. I tried to hide my surprise. Not that one, Dad. Your real son. My mother's pregnancy. He gave me a malicious grin. You're starting over your life, huh? You two are still young enough to build a whole new reality without me. If you were able to finish school and went to college, our reality would be completely different too, Jesus, I replied. But I lacked confidence. Oh, really? We're able to? Assuming I'm too dumb for it. Assuming I'm not good enough. Assuming your addiction is stopping you, I replied harshly. Well, Dad, I told you why I became this. I know you despise what I am now, and believe me, I despise myself too. I'm not good enough, but there's more. It was Grandpa. It was always Grandpa. His voice crescendoed. What about him? I asked, genuinely curious. He was my best friend in the whole world. The only one that ever thought I was enough. He was proud of me no matter what. He was positive and loved me, and none of you cared about his death. None of you. We all cared, son, but he was old, way older than your grandma, and he was sick, so dying was a mercy. We expected him to die, and he did, and it was natural and painless. Nobody asked me how I felt. He's the man who raised me. He's more my father than you are, and you all just fed your bullshit opinion. You and Mother said it was for the best. Grandma gave me this shit about afterlife and heaven and seeing him again. And you know what, Dad? There's no such thing. When you die, it's over. Everything is over. Everyone who misses you is left behind, alone forever. I know it. I saw it. As he finished speaking, his eyes were wide, like a veteran of war who witnessed too many horrors. December 25th, 1990. Last night we had our first Christmas night with Saul. After we sent him to bed, Dinah and I went downstairs to have a meal with our other son. I tried asking Jesus over and over what he meant by seeing the afterlife, but he refused to speak. Needless to say, I'm very frustrated. Hey Mum and Dad, are you enjoying your first Christmas with me caged? He mocked us. It was probably his terrible know-it-all personality again. Dinah and I had discussed whether or not we should medicate him for the personality disorder, but it could interact badly with the recreational drugs, causing a bigger harm. Better than the last one, when your ex-girlfriend's father had to call us because you were naked trying to spray paint their house, she replied, emotionally, then smiled. The turkey is better too. I was trying to write. I'm sorry, he replied, smiling for a different reason. A heavy silence fell upon us. We mechanically chewed the food. How do you know all that, Jesus? I asked bluntly. All that what? Oh, that. I just know. The drugs you're giving the body brought me to life. They gave me clarity somehow. The body, you said? Dinah was mildly interested. That's how we call it. Georgie suggested the vessel, but it was too dramatic. Who's Georgie? I asked. It's the little boy that's always inside the closet. We take turns on the wheel, the car being the body. While I'm talking to you, the others can be asleep, or talking to me inside our head. It sucks. I wish they would shut up, especially Eve. You shut up, my son exclaimed in a slightly higher-pitched tone, then continued, pleasantly. Sorry, I hate this guy. Dude calls himself the Destroyer. We promised not to tell you two about, well, us. But now that the cat is out the bag, I'm Eve. It's nice to officially meet you, Eve, I said. It was the good personality. Yeah, Georgie, I know you're scared of him. Just go to sleep, Eve muttered. Are you a she? Dinah asked. You could say so, Dinah. I believe I'm your son's more feminine side, but it only means that this fragment of personality called Eve is better expressed as a woman. Please don't get the wrong idea. It doesn't mean you have to act differently around me. You can, in fact, call me Jesus if it works better for you. Yeah, Eve, I know how multiple personality disorder works, Dinah answered quite coldly. January 10th, 1991. You'll be turning 18 soon, son. What's the plan? I waited until we were alone to ask. Dinah was acting uncharacteristically, but I figured it was only the pregnancy hormones. It's been almost a year, he asked, in disbelief. While considering the polite feminine tone, it was Eve. Yes, to be honest, your mother thinks you'll be here forever, but I hope that you'll recover. That you'll wake up one day and say, okay, I've had enough. I want to move on with my life. Melvin, I'm sorry, but Jesus hasn't been controlling the body later. The drugs made the three of us wake up, and we don't want to stop existing. So it's a no. I'm a conscience sharing a body with others very different from myself. I would love to keep the drugs to a minimum, see the world, go to college, have some friends, be normal. But this is not my body, and I'm stuck to the others. The tone abruptly changed to the angriest voice I've ever heard. You're as much a parasite as we are, Eve. January 28th, 1991. Dad, I talked to God. It was his original personality. He looked disturbed. To be honest, he looked awful. My son wouldn't let me shave his face or cut his hair, so his beard was growing in clumsy tufts. His breakdown from September had left vertical scars across his whole cheek, starting under the eye. His eyes showed despair and something deeper I couldn't even understand. Please tell me what he told you, son, I asked. Jesus entered the closet and banged his head against the wooden door. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. He was filled with madness and fear. I entered the room to stop him. His forehead was gushing in blood. To my absolute shock, the emergency sedative didn't work this time. After I tried to forcefully put him to sleep, Jesus screamed in agony for an entire hour. We were both sitting on the floor of his room, his body sweating and trembling. I kept supporting my son's bleeding head in my hands, and begging a God I didn't know if existed for clemency. We talked to God, finally, Eve's soft voice spoke. I was relieved. Lately, I'm always relieved when she takes over. Jesus won't be back for a few days. I'm sorry, Melvin. It's okay, I said, still holding my son's body. I'll tell you what we talked about, or rather, what we saw. She did her best to paint me a very terrifying word picture. According to Eve, God revealed them a perfect world, the end of hate, war, and misery. He then showed how easily humanity could achieve that. The world could be fixed, and it wouldn't take a lot of effort. But the thing was that we didn't want to. I felt a crushing despair when I realised that, Melvin. I don't want the world to be fixed. I didn't know why at first, but then I looked inside myself, and I know it. Knowing was even worse. Her voice was breaking, containing such agony that my stomach sunk. She made a pause, almost like she couldn't bear the words that would be spoken next. We don't want to be happy or even free, Melvin. We just want to be saved. We don't want everyone to be saved because we want to be special. Each and every one of us wants to be God's golden child. As she cried, the blood on her forehead streamed down her face too, making it look like she was weeping tears of blood. Aren't we better than that by now? You would love to believe that, wouldn't you? Eve bitterly laughed. But that's not the case. No, our most basic, primitive instincts still rule us. When others suffer and we receive mercy, we consider ourselves the true sons of God. That's what we want. That's why we won't reach a perfect, happy world. I realised how truthful her words were. The only thing that kept me going while my son was succumbing to his addiction and distancing himself from us was knowing that there were people in far worse situations. He wasn't the first 16-year-old boy to almost overdose on heroin after not coming home for 3 days. What if he was? What if no one else was suffering? I couldn't bear that thought. The disgrace of others gives me strength to get through my own. Then God showed us how useless everything is. Either way, we'll die and there's nothing left. You become just, I don't know, the spectre of a dust particle of a ghost or something. Sorry, Melvin. My head hurts too much. I can't even bear to remember staring at nothingness. I need to sleep as well. I cleaned my son's forehead with my shirt, then landed a kiss on it. It's just the drugs, my dear. It's just a bad trip. Please don't think about it. But I wasn't sure of my own words. February 13th, 1991. Do you believe that afterlife could be nothingness? I asked Dinah. We were constantly fighting, but as randomly as it started, she would hug me and be sweet again. She never apologised, she simply acted as the argument didn't exist. I kept blaming the hormones. She was carrying my baby, so I had to be patient with her. As someone raised by Teresa, no. I broke free from her religious shackles long ago, but I still like to see myself as a spiritualised person. Someone that believes in something bigger and stuff. I think it helps giving meaning to life, Dinah replied. But as a scientist, yes, that would be most likely theory. In fact, I'm no physicist, but it only makes sense that we started as nearly nothing and our end is becoming nearly nothing again. Obviously, it wasn't a weird question coming from a sociologist. but she probably noticed that there was something else behind it. What if someone under the influence of drugs saw the afterlife, and it was actually nothingness? You know the answer, Melvin. I would say it's probably a bad trip. Probably, I emphasised. I can't say for sure if I have no proof, honey. What are you saying? Jesus died and saw the afterlife, then came back? Something like that, yeah. But he didn't die. He says God showed him. She dismissed it with her hand, like it was a waste of her time. You know, Dinah, you should go downstairs more often. The next time I'm going, I'll cut his head open to see what's inside, she said, jokingly, but her words were dark and heavy, hanging in the air like dust. February 26th, 1991. The last few weeks have been rough on Dinah. She's constantly passing out and having to go to hospital. The doctors think our baby will be born before the right time. I can't say I'm not afraid. I'm afraid God will deny us a second biological son because we failed our first one. Saul is always a very good kid, worries like crazy about Dinah. When he's not at school, he's always on her bedside. She had to stop going to work earlier than planned. With all this happening, I'm not having much time to look after Jesus. My whole family lives abroad, except one of my cousins, and she offered to come help us. Dinah wanted me to refuse, but I'm very overwhelmed with taking care of my pregnant wife, 2 sons, house and work, so I accepted. Lynette is coming from Philadelphia in a few days. March 1st, 1991. Our little David was born this morning. He's so tiny and frail, but seems to be perfect, and it's the cutest baby I've ever seen. I love him so much. I remember loving Jesus when he was born too, but we were young and unprepared. Nothing matches a son you happily waited for. David will have to stay in the incubator to get stronger and avoid getting ill, but he's not at risk. Dinah is extremely tired and complains her whole body is aching, but with a little rest, I know she will be fine and back to her old self. I'm writing on the hospital right now, since I always have this diary with me. I'm about to go home and get some things for Dinah, and I'll bring Saul to meet his baby brother. I tell Jesus when he's in a good mood. March 2nd, 1999. Dinah is absolutely going to kill me. I fucked up. I fucked up so bad. I don't even know how to write this in my diary, let alone tell her. You see, I had to rush Dinah to hospital in the middle of the night. I was overwhelmed. She was in so much pain, and I was afraid she was going to die. But it turned out that our baby simply couldn't wait until 9 months. With her constant mood swings and nausea, I thought it'd be best that I spent less time around her, gave her more space. So I've been spending more time at the basement. I was downstairs when my wife screamed for me. She needed me to drive to the hospital immediately. As I ran to help her, I forgot to lock the door behind me. The basement door. And our son, who was sleeping soundly by the time we left the house, saw the forbidden door so close to his reach by the morning. He was alone at home. He's a curious kid. It's not his fault. Saul went downstairs and saw Jesus. I have a splitting headache. I'll try to keep writing later. March 3rd, 1991. It's never happened to me before, but I'm sure this is an anxiety crisis. My chest hurts like there's needles in my lungs, and everything is so overwhelming. I'm so glad Lynette is here today. She's making us lunch. God bless her. I'm a mess, and both my wife and newborn son are at the hospital. I'll have to tell her about Saul. I can't deal with this on my own. I feel like I'm going crazy each passing second. Well, let me write this. It will help organise the thoughts. Who's the man downstairs, Daddy? Saul asked innocently. I felt all my life force leaving my body. What do you mean, Saul? I asked him to buy time, but I was 99% sure what he meant. On the basement, the screaming man with the big scar, he replied. There wasn't the time to be mad because the boy went off limits. It was my fault for not locking the door, and I hate myself. Son, do you trust me? Very, very much. He smiled innocently. Of course, Daddy. You said you would take care of me, and it was true. Okay, so Daddy promises to explain about the man later, but you can't tell anyone. Not even Mum or Aunt Lynette. Do you promise? Yes, he replied. I murmured good and hugged him. Saul is a precious boy, and I don't want him to suffer because of our mistakes. We already know he suffered too much in his short life, but I only postponed the crisis. I'll have to offer some sort of explanation, and nothing seems reasonable. March 9th, 1991. Dinah's recovered and she's full of energy, while the baby is still at hospital to grow stronger. I couldn't keep my secret to myself anymore, so I told her that Saul saw Jesus on the basement. Saul told me that they talked, but he can't remember what the man said to him. As I expected, Dinah freaked out. It was just a moment, baby. Jesus didn't even escape. They talked, Melvin. Saul is big enough to remember this, even if it's true that he doesn't remember it now. I'm so sorry, Dinah. Maybe I should tell Saul that the man is very sick and we're helping him. What if he tells someone? Everyone will know who it is. I keep making up excuses to my mother. Jesus is studying too hard. Jesus with your parents in Scotland. I told school he's studying abroad and our neighbours that he went to rehab. It's been over a year and people were having a hard time believing my stories. And you had to go make it worse. Okay, I'm sorry, Dinah. This is absolutely my fault. You were busy and in pain giving birth to our baby, and I screwed up. I have no words to express how sorry I am. I'll talk to Saul again and try to find out what he knows. No talking, Melvin. I will extract his memories. I chuckled in disbelief. You wish it was so easy. I'm serious. She tackled me hard enough to know she meant it. It's an experimental procedure, but I've done it before. To rats, of course, but I trust my ability. I feel like I don't know you anymore, my love, I whispered, doing my best not to cry. It's to protect him, Melvin, to fix what you fucked up. And I'm sure this is not the worst thing a mother has ever done to her son. March 15th, 1991. Will God ever forgive me for experimenting in two of my sons? Will I someday experiment on little David? I can't believe the monster I've become. I can't believe how far we have gone. Dinah wouldn't give up. She was adamant on extracting Saul's memories. And I was weak-willed and scared. I didn't want to go to jail for trapping my 18-year-old son in the basement, even if it was for his own good, even if he had access to all kinds of entertainment, and we gave him all the meals, even if he could elevate his unbearable craving without being unsafe. We couldn't risk it, not now, that we could finally be happy with Saul and David, and that we knew where Jesus was all the time. So, help me God, I complied. I took Saul downstairs under the excuse of finally explaining to him about the man with the big scar. As soon as we entered the basement, Dinah injected a sedative into our middle child. I'll never forget the look of betrayal on his little face in the few seconds before Saul passed out. Dinah had snuck some of her work equipment into the house. It was easy because she was prestigious at the lab and frequently worked from home. I assisted her in the surgery with shaky hands, contrasting her steady, experienced ones. Dinah didn't formally study to be a surgeon, but her job required her to manipulate tissues and substances with this sort of precision, and she was fantastic at it. I don't know the technical details, and Dinah didn't bother telling me. I suspect that lately she lost respect for me and my profession, like I'm a third-rank scientist. My head is killing me. I'll get back to that. March 17th, 1991. The surgery was almost a success. Dinah was able to select the memory she wanted to delete on rats, then expose them to situations they would be familiar with, but they suddenly weren't. That's how she knew it worked. At least, that's how she dumbed it down for me. But the human brain is far more complex. You can't select the memories one has to forget. Everything is intertwined. So she wiped out everything. Saul forgot his name, the fact that he was an adopted child, and all about the dead biological mother. Maybe it's for the best. This used to make him so sad sometimes. I'm conflicted, but I think my son will be happier this way. March 30th, 1991. So far so good. Saul is still his happy, caring self, but now he doesn't need to remember the days he spent cold and hungry, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford his mother's medicine. He won't know the despair he went through at only 7 when his beloved and only parent died and he was alone in the world. The fact that he slept for only 2 years in a cheap and stiff mattress at the orphanage will never pop in his mind again. A thought crossed my mind, and I know Dinah will agree, but how ethical is it? Do we still follow any rule, or do we think we are God ourselves? I think it's awful. I'm an awful person, and I loathe myself every night before I drift off into troubled sleep, full of restless dreams. But through the pain and self-hatred, I've been learning so much about the human nature. April 17th, 1991. Dad, I can't stop talking to God. Please make it stop. I can't take it anymore. My son is a grown man. Still, his life is a constant child's nightmare. He desperately needs to start over. I'm sorry, Eve, Georgie, and even the Destroyer. We have to let you go. April 29th, 1991. The surgery was a success. We removed Jesus' memories. My head hurts. I've been listening to a voice inside my mind. Dinah says it's because I've been distressed, but now it will be gone. We'll be able to relax for the first time since our son got so drunk. He punched a man nearly to death. If you could perform the surgery, why didn't you suggest doing it to Jesus earlier? I had to ask. I had to. Dinah has been avoiding Saul, treating him coldly. I want to believe this out of guilt, and that being around him is unbearable. But maybe I just don't want to face the truth, that her heart is too far gone. She knew what my question implied. Did you experiment on Sol first because he's not actually our son? A healthy kid's brain would be easier than an adult, addicted one. I wanted to believe her so badly. May 6, 1991. My heart is absolutely broken. We followed through our plan. We agreed it too as parents, as scientists. We truly think it's for the best. But man, it was so hard. We performed surgery on Jesus to completely erase his memories, just like we did to Saul. After his recovery, we kept him under sedation for recovery. And I drove him far away while Dinah stayed home with our 2 boys like nothing was happening. I left my firstborn son in a cheap hotel room, all alone, with a few $100s in his pocket and no recollection as to who he is. It was the only way. It was the only way to let him start over. As a sociologist, I saw plenty of addicts in my life, worked with them, talked to them, coordinated the social workers who pretty much kept him alive. I'm convinced that my son's case was the worst I've ever seen. I just feel, both as a father and as a professional, that he will never be the same. He will never be cured. Leaving him alone and helpless is his only chance to maybe start over. I drove for a quiet night 3 states away and checked in my son under a random common name. Jesus E. Shanton is gone forever, but at least this handsome, talented young man will have a shot at life. I will love you for the rest of my life, son. Please have a good one this time when you wake up. Did you know Saul wasn't your biological brother? I softly asked my husband. He was catatonic. I don't think he knew. Like David said before, Saul was diagnosed with a terminal disease. Now we know it probably came from his real mother, who died early as well. Saul passed last week. We've been sitting for hours at Malvin's old attic, reading dusty notebooks. Most were purely academic stuff, but this is honestly horrifying. Still, I owed my life to Dr. Shanton, and I didn't want to taint David's happy memories. I tried to ease the mood. So you're a premature and precious baby? He gave me less than half a smile. I can't believe my parents brainwashed and abandoned their own son. My brother. A brother I never knew. A brother I replaced without knowing. To be fair, your secret brother was troublesome, and an adult. I know what they did was wrong, but your parents had logical reasons. We fell silent. Do you want to go home? I finally asked. I wish I could. He flipped an aged page. But there's more. And that was a story from PoloniumPoisoning. Thank you so much, PoloniumPoisoning, for letting us read your story out. It's absolutely fantastic, and would love the opportunity to read another one of your stories. Thank you. As mentioned at the very start, PoloniumPoisoning has their own subreddit so you can read their stories yourself. I encourage you to go there and get involved, and also they have a Patreon if you would like to donate to them, which I will put in the description below. Thank you very much, guys. Take care now. Goodbye.